Honey gang, what's that word? What's that word? What's that word? How y'all coming? Yes, sir. Let's ball. Love. You know we finna turn this thing all the way up. You feel me? Hey. Don't let nobody trick you out your position. Don't let nobody trick you up off these streets. And most importantly, don't let them trick you into a coffin. Because that's what they doing to you. Because these days they tricking niggas into coffins. You hear me? You'll go from being a human being like this, living life, loving life, enjoying life, leveling up, achieving your goals, you know what I'm saying? Making new ones. Being the best person that you can be, because that's all we can do is strive to be better than we was the day before. No one's perfect and we never will be. You feel me? But like I said, you can go from being a human being to a hashtag in somebody's bio. You feel me? You can go from being a human being to a pair of socks. You can go from being a human being to a hoodie. You want to become a hoodie, a clothing item, a clothing article? Huh? You want to become a mural on a wall? A picture? Don't let nobody trick you into a coffin. You feel me? Because you will become a hashtag in somebody's bio, a memory. Hey, but on another note, make sure y'all hit that like button, subscribe button, you know what I'm saying? Share this to all your folks, families, and friends, and let's do this shit. Turn me up in this. Yes, sir. I can't curse like that. It's Ramadan. You feel me? I don't curse like that anyway, but you know, unless I get like hype as hell. Hey, I love y'all like play cousins. You feel me? If you're not following me on Instagram, go holler at me on IG. Send me a DM. Talk to me. I talk back. Any videos y'all want me to react to, shoot them to my DM on the gram. What's up? OZ1700, OZ1700. You know what I'm saying? Oh, make sure y'all come holler at me on Twitch. You know what I'm saying? At OZ1700. Same, you feel me? We be litty over there. We got the music jumping off. You feel me? We be turned up in this joint early in the morning, get the vibe going. You feel me? We do live reactions over there. We be talking popping it. Yeah, hey. All I can say is, you want to get over there. Get up on that Twitch. Go get on my Twitch. OZ1700. You feel me? Or holler at me on TikTok. Y'all know I'll be acting a goofball over there too. Same thing, OZ1700. Make sure on YouTube, on here, on YouTube, y'all go check out the Amazon Drivers Be Like series I got going up right now. It's live right now. You know what I'm saying? We got 18 episodes up right now. Go check them out. Drop in the comments. Let me know what y'all think. You feel me? But on a little bit emotional note, the video that we're going to be reacting today is about a 10-month-old little baby. You know what I'm saying? Rest in peace, Mo. You feel me? Her father, damn, I hate, I don't like talking about stuff like this, man, but gotta bring this type of awareness to situations in these type of situations. Her father has been arrested and charged with the brutal unaliving of her, essaying of her, R-wording of her. And she was only 10 months old. She didn't even have a chance at life in no way, shape, or form. And that's terrible. That's nasty work. That's nasty work. Moment of silence for baby girl, man. Ameen. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. But yeah, I hope everybody have a great day today, an amazing day today, a beautiful day today, an awesome day today. I hope your today is better than today, and I hope your tomorrow is greater than today's. You feel me? So to all my beautiful people out there, 100 gang, let's get into this reaction. Love. Let's ball.
Little baby.
Oh, little baby.
Ooh. Give me those. Give me those toes. Give me those toes. You're so baby. You're so baby. You're so baby.
She's so cute.
It's hard to imagine how this child's death could be any more traumatic.
I'm gonna miss her.
She didn't make a sound, no cry, no breath, no heartbeat. That's how the call began, not from a neighbor, not from a bystander, but from her father. Calm, measured, detached. Inside a bare apartment with no heat, no lights, and no working water, a 10-month-old baby girl was found lying motionless, lying still on a mattress. There were no immediate signs of distress, no visible injuries, but something about the scene didn't add up. The water was still, the diaper was clean. The story didn't match the evidence, and while medical teams worked urgently to help her, he, her father, stood off to the side. Not in panic, not in tears, but silent, watching, waiting, as if the outcome was already known. Her name was Zara Lynn Scruggs, and she was days away from turning 1. This wasn't a case of neglect. It wasn't a tragic accident. What unfolded next forced prosecutors, detectives, and even the community to ask the same devastating question. How could something so wrong go unnoticed for so long? Before we continue, please be advised, this case includes deeply emotional material involving a child. We share it with care, not for shock, but to raise awareness, protect the innocent, and remind every viewer why speaking up matters. To those of you who have stood with us, thank you. Your support, your shares, your voices in the comments have helped these stories reach more people than we ever imagined. You're not just viewers, you're advocates. And if you're new here, welcome. We see you. And we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments and consider subscribing if you believe in justice and the power of awareness. Every time you
tap in the comments, man. Let me know where everybody watching from, man.
click, comment, or share, you're helping this story matter. Because when we stay informed, we stay vigilant. And when we speak out, we give a voice to those who no longer can. Now let's go back to the day Zara smiled for the last time. Zara Lynn Scruggs was born on December 1st, 2019. Her family called her Moo, a name that stuck, like nicknames often do, with no special reason beyond love. She was expressive, full of energy, and captivated those around her with her wide eyes and infectious smile. Her presence brought joy to everyone in the room, especially to her mother, Erica Scruggs. Erica was attentive, present, and deeply connected to her daughter. Those who knew her say she centered her life around Zara. Every milestone mattered. Every small moment, from Zara's first steps to her love for music, was carefully documented by a mother who saw nothing more important than raising her little girl. Zara's father, Austin Stevens, was also in the picture. At 29, he was seen as someone who had found stability. He coached for the Lower Providence Warriors, a youth football team. He also helped run a construction business, Black Diamond Construction. His outward appearance was one of control, structure, and normalcy. He spoke well, dressed neatly, and had the kind of professional front that didn't attract suspicion. There was nothing in his background that raised concern. No public complaints, no legal trouble, nothing that suggested he posed any risk to his own child. From the outside, he was a capable co-parent. After Erica and Austin ended their relationship, they agreed to co-parent without going through the court system. It was a mutual decision, informal, based on familiarity and a sense of mutual respect. Zara stayed with her mother full-time, but occasionally spent weekends with her father. That agreement had worked smoothly. There were no major conflicts, no emergency calls, no signs that anything was amiss. When Austin came by to pick up Zara, Erica's family didn't hesitate. Her father, Zara's grandfather, would often greet Austin with a handshake or a smile. On this particular weekend, he handed Zara over without a second thought. At that point, Austin had just moved into a new apartment in Lower Providence. He mentioned that the place was still being set up, that some utilities hadn't been turned on yet. It didn't raise alarms. People move all the time.
Yeah, wait, hold on. People move all the time, yes. But if you know you're bringing a 10-month-old baby to the house, it's certain utilities that must be cut on. You feel what I'm saying? Gas, water, electric. You know what I'm saying? Heat, stuff like that, that has to be on for a 10-month-old baby. They got to stay at a certain temperature. You got to make bottles for them and warm them up. You know, food for them and stuff like that. You feel what I'm saying? So it's like, miss me with that one right there, gang. To me, that's a red flag, bro. If somebody, if I'm my baby mom, or if I'm moving or whatever, and I know all my utilities and stuff is not cut on at the spot, I'm not having the kid come over them until everything is situated, because it got to be a good, nice, warm, safe environment for that child. She's 10 months old. What? No, I'm not coming at the folks now like that. I'm just saying, maybe he didn't go into detail about what was actually not on. You feel me? But, yeah, you definitely need electricity. You definitely need warm, hot water. You feel what I'm saying? You definitely need, gas. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's hot or cold outside, you need the AC or the heat. Like, you need that. So, when you say utilities, those are the only types of things you can mention. You can mean gas, electric, water, heat, you know what I'm saying? Shit like that. That's utilities. Yeah, I don't know. Am I tripping? I'm tripping. Tell me I'm tripping. That's a red flag to me right there. I wouldn't even, like, maybe they ain't think too much. I don't know, man. But let's get back to it.
Temporary inconveniences aren't uncommon. He explained it casually. No one pushed further. The visit wasn't unusual. There were no changes in behavior, no tension, no signals that something wasn't right. In Erica's mind, her daughter was spending time with her father. In her parents' eyes, this was just another routine handoff between co-parents who had made peace with their past. And in that silence, trust filled the space. These types of arrangements are more common than most realize. Many families rely on verbal agreements structured around shared history, goodwill, and the assumption that no parent would ever harm their child. It's often safer to believe in the best, to assume that what looks fine on the outside must be just as safe on the inside. But safety, when unexamined, can become a mask. The illusion of it can blind even the most attentive family, because when something feels familiar, it rarely triggers alarm. That's what makes it so difficult to see. Not because the signs aren't there, but because we're not looking for them. So many families trust, but trust doesn't guarantee safety. If you've ever shared custody or cared for a child, let us know in the comments what signs would worry you. The hardest part of hindsight is realizing the quiet moments were the ones that mattered most. Moments that felt ordinary, even forgettable. And that's what makes this case so difficult. There were no sirens before it began. No warning shots, just the assumption that everything was fine until it wasn't. October 3rd, 2020. It was a Saturday evening in Lower Providence Township, Pennsylvania. Austin Stevens had recently taken up residence in a new apartment located at 3400 Germantown Pike. The apartment was modest and unfurnished. At the time, it lacked some basic utilities. No heating, no hot water, and no working electricity.
Yeah, see?
According to
Oh,
official
man.
reports, the
No
indoor
heat,
temperature
no hot
hovered
water,
around
no
59
like,
degrees
what?
Fahrenheit. Despite those conditions,
No heat, no hot water, no electricity. How are you even living there? I'm feeling like he already knew what he was finna do. Like,
Austin followed through with plans to have his daughter for the weekend. That evening, he arrived at Erica's parents' home to pick up 10-month-old Zara. The handoff was routine. No one expressed concern. Austin gave no indication that anything was unusual about his apartment or the visit. He took Zara and left. It was supposed to be just another night between a father and his child. What occurred over the next few hours would later be scrutinized in forensic detail, revealing a timeline that raised more questions than answers. Between 9:27 and 10:22 p.m., Austin Stevens was active on his phone. Search logs retrieved by investigators showed a series of concerning queries, phrases that suggest a growing awareness that something wasn't right. They included, "If baby stops breathing," "What if you don't hear baby heartbeat?" "How do you know if a baby is dead?" The search activity didn't take place in isolation. At the very same time, Stevens was also engaged in conversations on social media. Investigators later confirmed he was messaging 2 different women, engaging in casual conversation, flirting, and sending images of himself. These messages, obtained by law enforcement through warrant, showed no mention of his daughter, no signs of concern, and no request for help. During the investigation, authorities carefully noted the timing of these online interactions. They were sent within minutes of the search queries.
you sending messages talking to females after you searching stuff about your kid hurting themselves on the phone. What, bro? Yeah, I hope they cooked him. Real rap.
He was alternating between looking up urgent medical terms and casually talking to women. The contrast was startling. At 10:40 p.m., Austin called emergency services. In the recorded call, he claimed that his daughter had slipped and hit her head while bathing. He told the dispatcher that he had stepped out of the bathroom momentarily and returned to find her unresponsive. Paramedics were immediately dispatched to the scene. What they found did not match his account. When first responders entered the apartment, they observed that the bathtub was dry. There was no indication that a bath had been run, let alone used recently. Zara was found wearing a diaper and placed on a mattress. The conditions inside the apartment were cold and dim. There was no warmth in the room, no signs of a child-friendly environment, and no obvious evidence that an accident had occurred the way it had been described. More striking, however, was Austin's behavior. According to the paramedics on scene, his demeanor was neutral, unusually calm, almost disconnected. When asked to assist, he made no effort to correct mistakes or clarify what had happened. He stood nearby as resuscitation efforts were underway, offering little verbal or emotional response. Medical personnel began their work, applying standard protocols to stabilize the child and prepare her for immediate transport. Despite their efforts, the situation was critical. Later, when investigators pieced together the timeline, the window between the initial signs of medical distress and the emergency call would become one of the most scrutinized aspects of the case. What was Austin doing during that hour? Why had he waited? And why was his online activity so far removed from the seriousness of the moment? These inconsistencies, both in the physical scene and in his digital behavior, formed the early pillars of the investigation. They did not yet provide a full picture, but they introduced a troubling possibility that something wasn't right long before the phone call was ever made. When something doesn't feel right, don't hesitate to speak up. Even small inconsistencies can mean everything. In cases like this, timing is everything, and the truth often is hiding in what someone didn't say soon enough. October 4th, 2020, just after midnight. At 12:12 a.m., medical staff formally recorded the time. 10-month-old Zara Scruggs was no longer responsive to any life-saving measures, and she had unfortunately passed away. Hospital records confirmed her arrival had been under urgent conditions. Despite multiple interventions, the outcome was final. The scene was then passed on to investigators for further review. At this point, the case moved into the hands of forensic professionals. Montgomery County's Office of the Coroner assigned the matter to Dr. Frederick Hellman, a seasoned medical examiner with years of experience conducting high-profile forensic reviews. The next phase was clear: determine the official cause and manner of what had occurred. As is standard, a full examination was ordered. The results would later be submitted as part of the case file and presented in legal proceedings. According to Dr. Hellman's findings, the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. The manner was ruled a homicide. The medical findings alone were sufficient to raise concern, but they weren't the only pieces of evidence investigators had access to. Law enforcement immediately began working with forensic specialists to compile a timeline based on digital and physical data. One of the first things they did was obtain a search warrant for Austin Stevens' phone. The contents of the device would play a pivotal role in unraveling his claims. Inside the phone's data, investigators uncovered the same internet searches referenced earlier, but this time, they matched them to timestamps and messaging history. The queries for emergency procedures had taken place within an hour before the 911 call. But there was a critical gap. While these searches occurred, Stevens wasn't just browsing for help. He was actively engaged in social conversations with two women on social media platforms. The content of those chats was casual, flirtatious, unrelated to any emergency. This wasn't speculation. The timestamps provided by his own device created a sequence that could be verified second by second. While Zara's condition was declining, Stevens had not called for assistance. Instead, he was alternating between...
An hour after she passed, he was just contacting authorities to come help an hour later? Or while she was, like...
medical search terms and unrelated messages. Further examination of the physical space revealed additional inconsistencies. Among the items collected as evidence was a diaper found near the child's sleeping area. Its condition raised immediate concerns, and it was submitted for forensic analysis. Reports later confirmed it contained biological material that became part of the official case record. That detail alone challenged Stevens' earlier explanation of a fall in the bathtub. The physical evidence and the statement he had given did not align. The digital timeline was what ultimately began to close the gap. By comparing Stevens' device activity, message history, and browser logs, investigators were able to construct a nearly minute-by-minute reconstruction of events leading up to the emergency call. At no point in those exchanges was there a message for help. No call to a friend, no text to a relative, no communication that suggested a parent in panic. The only outreach made to 911 came after the hour had already passed and the search terms had already been entered.
Okay, so it was an hour
When authorities
after.
reviewed the evidence, they noted something particularly troubling. Among the messages retrieved from the phone, one stood out. A line sent during the middle of his digital activity, time-stamped and recorded. It showed that Stevens had been aware of his daughter's condition well before the 911 call was placed. And yet, during that same time frame, he had continued his unrelated messaging with no visible sense of urgency. This became the pivot point in the investigation. Everything that followed would rely on this contradiction. A child who needed help, a timeline that showed delay, and a father whose actions didn't reflect the emergency unfolding around him.
I gotta go.
But one key message on his phone revealed exactly how long he knew and chose not to act. October 6, 2020, just 2 days after the events at the apartment on Germantown Pike, Montgomery County detectives took decisive action. Following a detailed investigation of the scene, interviews with emergency responders, and a forensic review of digital evidence, Austin Stevens was formally arrested. The charges filed against him included aggravated assault, involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, and endangering the welfare of a child. The arrest came swiftly. Authorities stated there was sufficient probable cause based on conflicting statements, inconsistencies at the scene, and the digital trail recovered from his phone. Stevens was processed and held at Montgomery County Correctional Facility. Prosecutors moved to have him held without release, citing the seriousness of the charges and the nature of the investigation. By December 1st, after additional forensic results were submitted and the medical examiner's conclusions were officially entered into the case record, the charges were escalated. Montgomery County District Attorney Kevin R. Steele announced that Stevens would now face additional counts, including first-degree murder and third-degree murder, along with related criminal offenses. Assisting in the prosecution were First Assistant District Attorney Edward F. McCann and Assistant District Attorney Brianna Ringwood. Together, they prepared the case for presentation to the court. In their statement to the press, the team emphasized the strength of the evidence and the urgency of pursuing justice. Bail was set at $1 million. Stevens was denied release. The court cited risk factors and community safety in its ruling. The gravity of the charges, especially in light of the forensic timeline and phone data, left no room for doubt about the path forward. News of the arrest spread quickly. Community members who had once seen Stevens as a reliable coach and business owner now saw headlines they could barely reconcile with the person they thought they knew. Among those who responded publicly was Stevens' own mother. In a powerful statement made to local media, she voiced her complete disapproval of her son's actions. "He is a monster. We do not support him," she said. "We are completely against what he did to my granddaughter." It was a rare moment of clarity in a case filled with deception. The emotional split between personal love and moral accountability was not softened. She chose the child over her son, and she said so without hesitation. Meanwhile, the broader community began to grieve. In the days that followed, friends, family, and even strangers came together to support Zara's mother and extended family. A GoFundMe was launched in Zara's name. Within a short period, over $46,000 was raised. Contributions poured in from across the country. Many left comments expressing sympathy, outrage, and a desire for change. A funeral service was held shortly afterward. More than 500 people attended. The ceremony was filled with photographs, soft music, and shared memories. The outpouring of support was a reflection of how deeply this case had touched the public. People who had never met Zara felt the weight of what was lost. This wasn't just a legal case. It became a wake-up call. A reminder that harm doesn't always come from where it's expected. Sometimes it comes quietly, from someone once welcomed at the door.
The ones that's closest to you that'll do you the worst, in the worst way. The ones you think you can trust, the ones you think supposed to love you, have your back, hold you down, will be the same ones that stab you in your back, do the worst to you, hurt you in the worst ways. And I'm so mad that this little baby had to go through that. I hope that it's haunting him for the rest of his life. I hope they doing him dirty inside there. In the worst way. Goofy.
If your community has ever rallied in response to a crisis, if you've seen neighbors become protectors, share how below. Because when justice begins, it doesn't start in a courtroom. It starts with people paying attention and refusing to look away. October 13th, 2020. Less than 2 weeks after his arrest, Austin Stevens appeared in court for his preliminary hearing. Prosecutors presented the foundational elements of the case: digital records, forensic summaries, and key witness statements. The goal wasn't to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Not yet. It was to demonstrate that the case had sufficient weight to proceed to trial. The presiding judge reviewed the material and agreed. The evidence was compelling. Testimony from investigators pointed to contradictions between Stevens' statements and the physical findings. Search data retrieved from his phone and the timeline surrounding the emergency call were introduced to the court as key pieces of the prosecution's position. The case was bound over for trial. The court then began its slow progression toward a full jury trial. COVID-19 had introduced delays across the entire justice system. Like many other proceedings during that time, this case was impacted. Courtrooms operated at reduced capacity. Hearings were staggered, timelines extended, By March 2022, the trial was ready to begin. The prosecution opened with a clear and deliberate strategy to show that Stevens not only failed to act when he should have, but that his behavior prior to the emergency call demonstrated full awareness of what was happening. They laid out the timeline, starting with the hours of online activity, the social messaging history, and the delayed 911 call. The digital evidence served as the backbone of their case. Everything had a timestamp. Every action could be placed on a clock. There was no speculation, just patterns. The prosecution also emphasized behavioral inconsistencies. They brought in paramedics who responded that night, investigators who observed Stevens' demeanor, and medical professionals who treated Zara upon arrival. The testimony was methodical, calm. Each witness relayed what they saw, what they were told, and what didn't add up. After several days of witness examination, the defense responded. Their strategy focused on suggesting that while the situation was tragic, it wasn't intentional. They attempted to reframe the timeline as reactive rather than deliberate. That the online searches and delays could be explained by confusion, fear, a lack of...
What? It wasn't intentional. Y'all don't even believe that.
Medical knowledge, but the evidence didn't support confusion. It documented decision-making, repeated measured delays, a complete absence of communication with anyone, until it was too late. On the final day of proceedings, the jury was sent to deliberate. The weight of the charges was significant. First-degree murder, involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, endangering the welfare of a child. Each charge carried its own standard of proof. Each required the jury to consider intent, knowledge, and actions. They returned in just 90 minutes. The verdict, guilty on all counts. There was no public statement from Stevens. He declined to take the stand. He also declined the opportunity to speak before sentencing. He remained silent as the judge issued the final decision. The sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole. Courtroom observers noted that Stevens showed no visible emotion. He was escorted from the courtroom by deputies without resistance. No appeal was filed at the time of sentencing.
His people was talking about it wasn't intentional. Bro ain't even had no emotion for what he did to his own child.
The decision was final. For those watching, it wasn't just a conclusion. It was confirmation that the system had listened, that every log file, every forensic record, every delay that was once just a suspicion had become evidence. And that evidence became accountability. If you believe sentencing alone doesn't bring closure, but awareness can, consider subscribing to help spread prevention. Because justice doesn't just happen in a courtroom. It starts with attention. And it continues with people who care enough to keep talking about it. In the months following the trial, there was no legislative overhaul, no sweeping policy changes. But something else happened, something quieter, and in many ways, just as meaningful. Parents began having conversations they hadn't had before. Conversations about safety, about trust, and about the risks that don't always come with a warning label. Zara's case, though painful, reached people. It circulated not through headlines alone, but through personal posts, private messages, and online forums where parents and caregivers began reevaluating their own lives. They weren't just asking what happened, they were asking how to prevent something similar from ever happening again. Local parenting groups and child advocacy communities began organizing sessions, not to revisit the case, but to use it as a starting point. Discussions were held about informal custody arrangements and how easy it is to overlook risk when familiarity creates a false sense of security. It wasn't about blame. It was about awareness. One recurring theme emerged again and again: invisible risk. When two parents share custody without court involvement, they're often operating on trust, and in most cases that works. But when there's no oversight, no documentation, and no external accountability, it creates a space where problems can go unnoticed until it's too late. Zara's case brought that concern into focus, not just for legal professionals, but for ordinary families who had always assumed they were doing the right thing. The hashtag Justice for Zara
And I
began.
understand that, you know, that aspect. As far as like invisible awareness, it's like, damn, you wouldn't expect like that. I'm sorry, that still go back to the people closest to you be the ones that do the most to you. You feel me? The ones that hurt you the most. So I understand where the security was in that situation. The invisible awareness was. I can see it. You know what I'm saying? You like that.